Good Thursday morning to you. Yesterday I spoke to you about God's providence, talking about Genesis 50. Today I want to talk about the second part of that, which I think is hope. I think when we better understand providence, when we better understand that God is at work, despite what we see and really what we know, when we ground ourselves in what our faith tells us and claims to be true, that is when we find hope. I don't think you can separate those two. I think that they are intricately connected together. And I see hope in so many different ways in the scriptures, but specifically today I want to turn to Ecclesiastes. The third chapter of Ecclesiastes is almost always used in moments of suffering, at times of funerals, and times of remembrance. We begin with looking at there is a time for everything. That's when our human minds are trying to make sense of things that we can't even fathom. It's when our human minds are trying to imagine and see as God sees. I think the writer of Ecclesiastes knew that we would do this, because what comes after that passage that we so frequently read is where I want to turn our focus today. In verses 9 through 14 of Ecclesiastes 3, it says this: "What do workers gain from their toil? I have seen the burden God has laid on the human race. He has made everything beautiful in its time. He has set eternity in the human heart, yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end. I know that there is nothing better for people than to be happy and do good while they live, that each of them may eat and drink and find satisfaction in all their toil. This is the gift of God. I know that everything God does will endure forever. Nothing can be added to it, and nothing taken from it. God does it so the people will fear him." Now there's some words in there that I think we misinterpret too often, or we draw a conclusion that the writer may not actually be drawing. He has made everything beautiful in its time. This is referring to the burden God has put on us. That word burden is kind of a fascinating word. And if you think about all of the meanings that it could be within the Hebrew language, burden kind of gives us a meaning or a purpose or an identity that may not be the intention of the writer. It's more of opportunity. It's more of a weight that comes with life in this world. I don't think we have to live long in this world to know there is a weight that comes with it. Even for the simplest, most beautiful child, who in human development learns very early in their life that they are connected to their parents, or when they're away they cry, right? That connection happens. Fear is something that's learned in our behaviors, and if you think back to the first time you were scared of something, that's probably pretty far back in your memory. But God has made everything beautiful in its time. He has set eternity in the human heart. Yet no one can fathom what God has done from the beginning to the end. You know, that's what got us trouble in the Garden of Eden. The serpent, the devil, the tempter, came to Eve and said, "If you take a bite of this fruit, you will see as God sees." That's our human nature. We want to be God. We want to replace God. The way the serpent says it sounds intriguing, but that's the reality of sin. Our sin is putting us in control and God in the back seat. It's separating us from God. It's making it so that our vision, our insight, our desires are better than anything God might have for us. That's the very nature of sin. And so, since the beginning of the fall, we have been trying to replace God, to be God. And the writer of Ecclesiastes reminds us, he has set eternity on the human heart. He's already connected to us. He who made us in his image is already within us. But still, we cannot fathom what God has done, not from the beginning nor to the end. I know there's nothing better for people than to be happy and do what is good when they live, that each of them may drink and eat and find satisfaction in their toil. It's a gift of God. When we were banished from the garden, it was our call then to work the land. We would toil. We would have suffering. We would have pain. But God was always in that. Even still today, as we toil, as we labor, God is still in so much of that. God is still at work. God is still nudging us and pushing us and guiding us in all that we do. And then verse 14, right? Verse 14 is the culmination of our faith. I know that everything God does will endure forever. Nothing can be added to it or nothing taken from it. God does it so the people will fear him. Indeed, in this world, there is a time for everything. And while I love these bright, warm, sunny days, I know that it's important for us to have the rainy, cool ones as well. And what a great metaphor for life as well. There are times when life is good and bountiful and abundant and it just is amazing. And there are times when we feel like we are lacking. That's really only our perception. God fills in those moments where we feel we are lacking with more than we can even fathom. That's our message today. There's a time for everything that happens under the rhythm of the sun and the stars and the moon above us. And yet God is in all of it. As you draw near to the end of your week, I hope that you are opening yourself up and reimagining the providence that God has revealed to you in your life. Maybe that's a new awareness that you're coming to. But I hope more than anything that providence of God at work leads you to the fullness of what hope is all about. Because that's a huge part of faith. Hope. Hope in God's love. It makes us endure everything that we face in this world. It fills us with all that we need. And it keeps us for the world yet to come. Have a great Thursday.